Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, Pat Metheny. As my good friend Dave says, there are very few things in this world that are actually as good as you think they're going to be, and there's Pat Metheny and, as Dave would say, bacon. So Pat Metheny, truly the bacon of jazz musicians. Anyway, Pat being Midwestern and me being Midwestern, I think probably has a lot to do with my deep appreciation of him. But I can remember in college the first time somebody lent me the Off Ramp record, and I listened to Are You Going With Me? And I put it on in my college dorm room, and there was a gentle thunderstorm that began outside. And so ever since then, that piece of music and a thunderstorm just kind of go together, because it's just such a mood, such a mood. Are you going with me? Such a longing, such a yearning in that song. But that basically began my whole Pat Metheny journey, and then I went back to Bright Size Life and New Chautauqua and everything, all the releases. I was in college in the late 80s, and so was able to keep up with his stuff and see him a few times as well. Saw the Song X tour. That was weird. Saw Lyle Mays in Dayton, Ohio on his first album with Mark Johnson on bass and Peter Erskine on drums. Really, really great. The story I want to tell today, because I got a few Pat Metheny stories that I think you'll enjoy, but this one is one that I really enjoy. It was 1987. I had a band at Miami University called Finished Sketches, and we were heavily influenced by Pat Metheny's group and the new age movement, all the acoustic music that was going on then, the Windham Hill label. And so we had a chance to go see Pat and with the group in Columbus, Ohio. It was 1987, so First Circle, I guess, came out in 1984, and I was a physics major, and so I would frequently be listening to music while I was doing especially math homework. I couldn't do any kind of writing or anything, but music and math just went together really well. So I bought the First Circle record, here we go, and it just, found it to be truly amazing, except for that one weird song, Forward March, on there that's just so bizarre. And I guess they kind of did it, I don't know if they did it as a joke or what they did it at, but they thought, oh, this will be a great way to start our shows. We'll come out like a marching band. But I think even Pat kind of regrets putting it on the album. But the rest of every other song on the record is just completely amazing, and especially the title cut, First Circle. And I remember the first time I heard it and hearing those clapping hands and really just kind of being mystified by what is going on. It's like I can't follow the time meter here. I can't follow anything. And then the song just sort of evolves in this beautiful, seemingly inevitable way. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard before, and it really arrested me. So I remember I was doing some homework, and I was just really trying hard to figure out what the pattern was. What was the meter of this song? How does this thing work? And I figured out by listening to the clapping hands, and I kind of did a little doodle on my notebook, which I would later turn into this very, very simplistic watercolor I'm about to show you. But I just did this kind of pattern of the bop 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 bop. So I solved it. I solved the little riddle, and it actually made the song a little bit more fun because I could understand what was going on with it. And then I turned on a lot of other people to that record in college, man. I was a big evangelist for Pat Metheny, but especially this. And I would, bring out my little painting and say, well, this is how it works. It goes like this. Flash forward to 1987, and I'm with my band at this show in Columbus, Ohio with Pat Metheny Group. Pat's just so down to earth and such a regular guy. And I'd always kind of put Lyle Mays, it's like that's how I wanted to play. I'm a pianist. I really wanted to play the way that Lyle played. I've never heard anyone, Bill Evans, Keith Jarrett, you know, Lyle Mays, just transcendent piano. So I was always really blown away by that. But, you know, Lyle was I'm so sad he's gone, but Lyle was a unique and elusive spirit. And so he wasn't really the kind to come back out after the show and talk with everybody. But Pat did. Pat came and sat on the lip of the stage, and there was probably like 50 of us that had stayed behind. And then he was just taking questions. He would just, you know, anybody that could ask him anything that they wanted to. And I was so scared, nervous that, you know, my mind just blanked. I'm like, oh my God, I have a chance to talk to Pat Metheny. I can't think of a single thing that I want to say or ask. I freaked out for probably a good half an hour. And that's how long he sat there. And other people were like, hey, my guitar teacher was just those weird references. And he was like, yeah, man, that's cool. I got myself together. And I said, Pat, I have a couple of questions. I said, I have a band right now. My first question is, how do you all make decisions? You know, is it a democracy? How does it go? And he said, it's a benevolent dictatorship. Which I thought was just such a great answer. It's so telling of how Pat goes about things. But yeah, benevolent dictatorship. When they were doing composing, when they were working, when they were rehearsing, it was, you know, he was running the show, a benevolent dictatorship. And I thought that was really telling, because we were having struggles in my band about how we would make decisions about what to do and what not to do. So I thought that was great. But then I said, you know, when I listened to First Circle, I started writing a little pattern of just like little, you know, these little lines like this. And I said, is that how you went about composing that, or how exactly did you do that? He said, yeah, it was very much like that, man. It was very much thinking of this little pattern and writing it down, and then using that to be the basis of the song. And, you know, First Circle is such a great title for something like that, because it just, the rhythm, the pattern just keeps circling around and around, and then they, you know, they worked out a million different ways to like explore that. So just a great experience with Pat Metheny, who to this day remains, I think, just an almost transcendent human being. You know, someone that was like put amongst us for all of us to enjoy. And have you ever seen anyone have the amount of joy that Pat has when he's playing? You know, I saw him in a little club, Blues Alley in Washington, D.C., so I was really close to him and to the rest of the band, and just a little bar. And so they were playing, and they had good tunes and everything, and it was an interesting band. It wasn't a great band, but it was an interesting band. And there was a moment when Pat got a chance to really do a solo, and he was sitting on a chair, you know, and he was doing his thing, you know, going like this and everything, and then the solo actually lifted him up in his chair. You know, he was like, you know, something like that, and I felt the same lift. I felt like the whole room was lifted up by this moment of him just expressing joy through his instrument. So those are some of my reflections of experiences with Pat Metheny. I would love to hear anybody else that ever had a chance to see him or talk to him. Rick Beato has such an amazing interview with him that was, you know, if you get a chance, if you like Metheny, you need to see that interview. It's truly fantastic. The folks that Rick Beato gets to talk to, so jealous, man, so jealous. What a great gig he stumbled into. As he would even say, he had no idea the YouTube thing would turn into what it has. But if anyone out there has a story about Pat Metheny, please share it with me here. I'd love to hear about it, and I'll write back to you, and we can have a little, you know, Metheny fest. But thanks for watching. If you like this, please click that like button, and please subscribe, become a part of our little Bourbon Vinyl Time Machine community, and keep on sipping and spinning. Peace out, y'all.